What's up, y'all? I'm Will here with Schedulefly, and this is the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, one of the highest rated hospitality podcasts in the world, brought to you by us at Schedulefly. We provide a very simple web-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. If you're on pencil and paper or Excel, or you're on some software with tons of bells and whistles and features you don't need or use, Schedulefly is the perfect place for you. Easy to use, point, click, and go, and we'll take great care of you. Schedulefly.com, free trial, check it out. Also, this podcast is brought to you by our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Webstaurant Store, the ultimate destination for restaurant pros. Whether you're launching a new cafe or prepping for the holiday rush, we've got you covered with top-notch equipment and everyday essentials, all at unbeatable prices. And right now, you can score $50 off your order of $250 or more when you use this code, WebSave50. All together, all one word, all caps, WebSave50 at checkout. Again, that's WebSave50, WEBSAVE50. But act fast, because this deal ends December 31st. Visit webstaurantstore.com to keep your kitchen running strong. Well, guys, thanks for making the trip down.
Thanks for having us.
Do me a favor, if y'all would just each introduce yourselves. Just name and the business and what you do for the business.
Sure. So I'll go first.
Go right.
I'm Sam Ballas. Basically a serial franchise system guy. Right?
All right.
So I'm a co-founder of the East Coast Wings and Grill concept. We have several of them in Charlotte, from Waxhaw to the north side of Charlotte. I'm a co-founder here with Sammy, Chef Sammy G here with Sammy Sliders. We also own some supplier firms that helps the franchise space with one firm coaching brands how to franchise and do it responsibly in the way that we feel like is the best way to franchise. And then we also have invested in a supplier firm, Dine Growth Group, that helps franchise models that are ready to scale. It helps them scale across the nation. So
Okay.
I say, I talk a lot on stage. I won't be on stage in Vegas next week, and I'll be in Austin the week after that. So I get on stage and say I'm a franchisor of a system or a few systems. I'm a supplier for the franchise space, and I'm a franchisee as well. So I've got all bases covered in the ecosystem of franchising. So my background's finance.
I just thought of 500 questions to ask you. How much time you guys got? You got an hour or a little more than an hour?
We got an hour.
All right, we're going to have a great conversation. All right, Sam?
So Sam Gianopoulos, co-founder in Sammy Sliders. I'm a restaurant, born and raised into it. You know, I'm a Johnson & Wells grad, chef out of in Charleston, South Carolina. And I have a few independent restaurants that I own and operate in my spare time. As taking a new brand off the drawing board and into business operations. You know?
Yeah, he's being modest. Sammy 2022 is one of 6 nationally award-winning chefs in the country with a silver plate.
Okay.
In the Restaurant Association and the Food Manufacturer Association. So super talent when it comes to culinary.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And 2 North Carolina guys.
And
Two North Carolina guys,
yeah.
born and raised in North Carolina.
Where were you born in Winston too?
Born and raised in Winston.
Have y'all known each other since
Pretty
childhood?
much.
Pretty much,
Right.
yeah. We've known each
Yeah.
other in our we're Greek. So the
Okay.
restaurant was kind of like, we were born and we were probably told as 5-month-olds, either you're going to go to college and do something different or you're going to be in the kitchen all your life. So
started off,
and we all did this. We all did the first, right? We
Yeah.
all went to
So
college. Educated.
your families both own restaurants?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, y'all have really come up in it then.
Yeah,
Okay.
we started
yeah.
washing dishes just like, peeling potatoes to, 16 years old. We didn't go to the Friday night football game. We were in the kitchen working, went to the game, the party after the game to enjoy everything,
It's funny you said that. I think my first high school, when I played high school sports, and in college, and in a junior college for a year, but my first high school football game was my senior year.
Really?
Yeah, because I was working.
'Cause you were working.
Yep.
My first job was at 12. I'm sure Sammy's going to have the same story. Busting tables, right, at a seafood restaurant. But I remember I had sprung my ankle in basketball season, and I was on crutches. And I told my father, I said, is it okay if I don't work, during the football season while I'm rehabilitating my ankle? And I went to my first high school football game,
Yeah.
the fall of
I don't think I
83,
made. I don't think I
1983.
made it to a football game. Actually, I made it to after the game. But yeah, we born and raised into it. We started young. We were taught, work hard, put an apron on, and see what happens.
Yeah.
And it's really unique that, we're in the franchise space developing food concepts to have a combined, restaurant experience of 60-some, 70-some years between the two of us.
Uh-huh.
And then a combined 30-some years in the franchising space. So it's unique to have, founders of a franchise model. They typically fall in for something they love to do, and, with what they're producing, whether it's food or service brands or et cetera. It's rare that you grew up in some space of an industry like we did in the food space, and then try to figure out, like I did 20 years ago with the first brand, okay, how do I franchise? We were so used to doing it, the old school way with, every uncle's a piece of the action at every location, every cousin's a piece of the action at every location. And, how do you take a model and kind of interstate that in systems and processes to help people you don't know, right, that come in the restaurant space as a franchise model? But so we're a little bit unique. We have all the bases covered, from finance to real estate to the food and operations. I mean, we just know the food space very, very well.
Clearly, y'all are okay. So it's not uncommon at all for somebody on this podcast to tell me they kind of got the bug because they started washing dishes at 12 or whatever, and that was and they've been at it ever since, or went to college, came back to whatever. That's not uncommon. That's a real common thread. What's unique about the two of you is you grew up in it, saw what was behind the scenes, saw all the hard work and all that goes into it, and then just double down into it. That to me is fascinating because, y'all, when I started this podcast, I mean, I was like salsa boy in a restaurant, and I busted, but I never, and I was young. Nobody in my family had done it. I had no appreciation, right? I started this podcast. I was like, I want to learn. I want to leverage what I learned from this podcast so that I can start my own restaurant one day. And man, it didn't take me long talking to restaurant owners to be like, hell no. I mean, literally, I was like, no way. Yeah. I don't have what it takes. I don't think I could stay cool under the daily pressure of the many different things that can go wrong. And that could be a literal fire. It could be a metaphorical fire, but it's every day, nonstop grind. And I think the despair, the difference between what the general public sees in restaurants and what they perceive it must be like to run a restaurant and how cool that must be versus the reality of yeah, it's cool, but there's so much that's really hard
being cool.
And I kept hearing, and I kept thinking, God, okay, I don't want to own a restaurant one day, but what I do want to do is keep meeting people that do it and telling their stories, because legit tip of the hat, profound respect, because it's hard as hell what y'all do, truly. Yeah. And so I admire you for growing up seeing that and being like, yeah, man, I'm in. I want to do this for my livelihood.
We were forced to have the bug. We were forced to go in and wash dishes on that Friday night. And then you just it's part of you. And then you fall in love with it.
It's what you know. Yeah.
It's what you know.
Yeah.
I can't sit in the office. I sit in my office at one of my restaurants, and I'm like, all right, I got to get out of here. I got to go shake hands. I got to go talk to people. I got to make sure the coleslaw's cut correctly or the sauce tastes correctly. It's a part of us. You walk in those doors, and it's game on. Your cape goes on and saying, all right, do I got to clean the bathroom first, because we have a mess there, or do I got to make sure the sauce tastes correct,
Yeah.
The coolness is that we are a product, as many people who are going to watch the podcast and listen to it in the country, we are a product of the American dream, right?
Amen.
Parents come over here from overseas after war ravaging of Europe. All they know how to do is labor. no formal educations. So when he says we were forced, I mean, when you see your parents, what they did as you were growing up, early teens into senior high school, you start realizing, like when you're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, you really don't understand what's going on, right? But as you
Right.
become a teenager, you see almost the slaving process of the restaurant, right? Because you're married to it.
Yes.
You're married to, you have a spouse, you have a family, and you have the restaurant.
That's
and
right.
So you almost feel obligated as fast as you think you can contribute to jump in.
Yeah.
I'm sure Sammy will have the same story, but I hated going to my dad and asking for weekend money.
Yeah.
After seeing what they do day in and day out, 14, 15 hours a day.
Yeah.
So we are legitimately a product of why people come to the country. And the coolness is that we've paid all those dues. In my perspective, I'm sure Sammy will have a different view, if not some of the same, but we should be able to do it smarter. And we were told all our teenage years, I'm sure he was told too, I was told, I'm the first one to go to college in my family line, to get a formal education, go to college, don't slave in the kitchens, don't do this, don't do that. Almost like fear management to get you into college-bound mentality.
Yeah.
And it was tough to get that moving in the family dynamic when your parents were not formally educated.
Right.
Your mother had, language barriers when you were growing up, right? So you get motivated to do something different. For me, it was financing. I love numbers, and so I was going through that process in my formal education. And Sammy, who loved food, went to chefing. He'll talk about here in a second. But for us, it's very cool to be able to look back at how we grew up and how our parents grew up, and now we have figured out how we can, stay in the restaurant space, develop concepts, help people succeed in the restaurant space by not having to be, hands-on in the restaurant itself 24/7.
Yeah.
So a complete different spin. I know my father came to one of our first franchise conferences at East Coast Wings and Grill years ago. He crashed it. My mom and dad did, and I took him with me, and I'm giving my speech in front of maybe 60, 70 people back in the day. And all of a sudden, as I'm on the stage talking to my peeps, I see my dad because beeline to the stage. I'm like, oh my God, what's he going to do? So he comes on stage, takes my mic to basically tell the crowd how proud he was, that he's doing what he did, but that I'm doing it, in a whole different processed kind of way, the restaurant space. And that he has no idea what I've said for an hour and a half on the stage already, or what you folks do out there. But I can tell you, it's got to be easier than what I went through. And then he gave me the mic back, and he walked off crying. I mean, it's one of those kind of,
man.
you know what I'm saying? It's
I bet that was
so. How do you not binge
Yeah.
forward, right, trying to build
Sure.
something? But
the pride he had at that moment. It's like it was so intense. He
man,
had to go.
It was deep.
He
It
had
was
to go
deep.
grab the mic.
I mean, there's no turning back for me then, right? It's a turning point in my life going, okay, well, I just went through for 4.5 minutes. At the end of that day, I'm sitting in my cabin because we were on a cruise ship then. I told my wife, I said, how do we not go and build this the right kind of way? Well, I just saw on stage with the old man.
Man, dude, that's freaking incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So yeah, I was. Everything was told: go to school, do good in school, go to college. I'm the youngest of three, so I wasn't the first to go to college. My sister was, but it was like let's get in the restaurant business. Go work at the restaurant and work. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that yet. So I enrolled in Johnson and Wells in Charleston, and I didn't know if the path was going to lead me back into a restaurant or something in this food space. But like I said, I knew it. I loved it. I thrived at it and haven't looked back. I've opened up several different concepts. That's the fun part, the development, all right, we're going to serve a cheeseburger. How are we going to serve it? What are we going to put on it? How are we going to, what plate is it going to go on? That's the fun part.
And the uniqueness with Sammy, I think, and I've told this before, a chef has an artistic kind of mind frame, right? It's, in my opinion, totally my opinion there in the audience, but I think that it's hard to find high-end quality chefing, so to speak, and operational combined.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So his experience with his parents and his family line in the restaurant, where he saw and learned the operational mechanics of how to do it operationally the right way, I think it's really unique because he's got that talent, and then he's got the culinary talent that goes with it. And I think when you have, chefs out there, they're great, talented people, they're not as good in the operational process as they are in the other talent, right? So even if they own or their names on the building, they'll bring in operational people to help them run the operation part. So Sammy's really unique because he's got the ability, especially for Sammy Sliders, he understands the culinary process of developing something better as a slider concept, more gourmet style. We call it beyond the bun, right, where the proteins are larger than a traditional slider, so you're really getting a good meal for the money. But then he's got the operational know-how, so he can communicate with an operator or franchise owner from the processing of the culinary and the food and translate that to the operation of the flow and how to manage the process. So it's very unique to have strength in both lanes at the same time.
Very much so. I mean, you have a lot of chefs that are brilliant at creating art with food, but if you can't make the numbers work behind, you have a lot of brilliant chefs
That's right.
the business part of it gets challenging. I'm curious. So you went so that was before they had a Charlotte campus, I assume.
They actually closed the Charleston campus and moved it to Charlotte at the time, which is a great campus. I've been to it many times. Charleston was a cool town.
Yeah.
And
that was a big win for Charlotte to get that,
huge.
because
The culinary scene.
It's helped the culinary scene here a lot. There was no culinary scene before. I mean, no disrespect.
No, there was.
Not at scale, right? Like
right.
not at the level we have it now. Do you think that I'm curious about, because of the cost of and I think about this in college in general now, like the cost is so extreme. Culinary education now, when you went versus now,
It's changed.
Like
the Food Network really pushed the whole culinary school and the culinary scene. When I first opened my first restaurant 25 years ago, like chiffonata basil, what's that? Just ribbon cuts of basil. Nothing special. Just a nice name. What culinary school does, it teaches you why to do things.
Yeah.
You can learn the how out in the field, but it teaches you why. Do you braise a piece of meat instead of grilling a piece of meat? And it's a great experience. I mean, is it a fast forward a little bit? Do you cut some years out of having a chef throwing a spoon at you because you're cutting it wrong? A little bit, but it's a great start. And it's an educational side of things. Maybe one day you can't be in the kitchen working. There's so many jobs you can go in the culinary field now, not nutritionist or a food broker or a food vendor. There's so many different avenues now than there was 25 years ago when I first got in it.
Yeah. Okay. When did y'all start working together as partners?
It's almost the best segue question, because you're going to say something when he just said, right? So we were in Atlanta with our church in a youth event, and we had our parents with us. I believe our moms were with us then, and our daughters are best friends. They're in school together here in Charlotte. But we went to a high-end seafood restaurant. We're foodies. We like to eat, and we like the diversity of Buckhead. Charlotte, you mentioned how it's expanded, but there's a lot of diversity in food in Charlotte now. And we're eating, and he was beside me, and we're talking some school, and he's ordering. I just let him order. We go out high and just do your thing. He'll order whatever. And then he asked to see if the chef will step out. And the chef came out, and they're talking about everything. And I'm listening to him kind of interacting and kind of confirming what he was doing in the back of the house to create the dish or whatever. And my mind just started racing. I'm thinking, man, I need to see if he wants to come in the franchising space for some things that I want to do. Was Zorability at that point, which is the consultant company that we had that coaches brands how to build franchise models responsibly and build them correctly. And the culinary side of it, I'm a foodie. I eat. You couldn't get me to braise anything correctly. I just can't do that, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm listening to him, and then after the chef walked away, I turned to him and I said, hey, I want to talk to you about something, if you have an interest in doing something in the franchising space. And we got in the car and we just started talking about it. Into one aspect of him being introduced to it and involved with it, And then fast forward 4.5, 5 years, and we own 2 supply firms right now, and we own the Sammy Sliders together, and launching that nationally. So it was watching him kind of in action, pretty much telling the chef what he did in the back, and because you just know, I thought, man, I don't have any of that talent. So if we want to build anything new, I wouldn't know, how many times he went, for example, for Sammy Sliders to make sure that the protein was the right size and the right thickness and the right mix. And, he wanted certified Angus beef, and he wanted it to be this, or, we wanted milkshakes, and then, we wanted it to be differentiating. We didn't want a Wendy's Frosty. We didn't want ice milk type of, we wanted ice cream, right? How do you stick Breyers and shove it through? It's not product placement, but shove it through, a soft serve process, right?
Yeah, right.
And then how do you put real ingredients to that strawberry shake that people can see the pieces of strawberry in the milkshake, or what we call now ice cream shakes that we have at Sammy Sliders. And when he figured all that up, I went and looked at it when he was playing with it, and I'm thinking, okay, this is awesome, but how are we going to pull that through a straw? So we had to go find, big old straw that we could pull the real fruit through that, whatever. But that's the differentiation of what I knew I didn't have.
Yeah.
To build something, and it was, I think, 2018.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
When we had that conversation in Buckhead, Atlanta, traveling with our church and some youth activity with our families, that we had that conversation. Just fast forward, and here we are.
So you have this broad concept of an idea. How long are you going through the process of baking out what this is going to be to when you open your first location?
You want me to take it?
Go for it.
So I would say that we spent, months thinking about the concept, and then it was during the COVID year, right? And what are we going to do with this? How are we going to do this? And then we launched just after, everybody said COVID's going to last 6 months, right? The pandemic, and it lasted 2.5 to 3 years practically.
Yeah, right.
And so we put together what we thought would be a really cool concept, and we launched it. And we knew we wanted to do something that was going to be a franchisable and scalability, franchise system that'd be scalable. And at one point, it was more of a multiple types of French fries that had deconstructed sandwiches topped on top of the French fries.
Okay.
And it had a couple sliders, We nailed the ice cream shakes. We had that. And to be responsible with a franchise model, when you want to take it to that model, you've got to proof it, validate it. You got to take all the beaten up. You don't want to go into franchising and have your franchise owner, first, second, third owners, be your R&D.
Right.
So you should responsibly do all the R&D. So we spent 2 years, right? And we figured out the day part. We couldn't figure out the night part. So we got lunch and the day part done. We couldn't figure out the night part. And in a family vacation last year, we were talking on the beach, and we said, this is getting a little frustrating. We're overthinking some things. How about we just get back to our restaurant roots and get back and restructure this idea we've worked on now live for 2 years, with investment dollar after investment dollar going in it, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 of investment dollars going in it to validate and proof it. And we ended up basically restructuring it down to rebranding it to Sammy Sliders.
Okay.
And without telling the marketplace in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, one iota of what we're going to do, everybody walked in on December the 3rd, maybe, of 2023, and they went, what's this? And the numbers just started talking. And then you fast forward Q1 this year, Q2 this year, and the numbers are now representing a fast casual success story as far as the AUVs, or the average unit volumes. Well, when we realized that we made the right click, so now we're 3 years into it, $600,000-$700,000 later. I mean, reality of developing something we think that we can franchise and scale. Then we had to go to number 2, right? That wasn't just enough. We had to be able to validate the brand with our own capital again and start all over with another location. And we did that in Kernersville, North Carolina, trying to keep it close to home base for supply chain reasons and training reasons. Well, that store's been embraced like no other process. And because of the background that we have in franchising in years, and the success with East Coast Wings and Grill, and I'm known in the franchise space as a unit level economics guy. I'm the EBITDA guy, right? My finance background.
Yeah.
I'm also on the board of directors of the International Franchise Association and the incoming vice chair globally in February in Las Vegas. So I'm knee deep in the franchising.
Is this just restaurant or is that
no?
just,
It's
this is just franchising?
Franchising
Okay, gotcha.
globally. So the IFA is the lobby arm of franchising.
Okay.
We just got recognized in Washington D.C. as one of the top 3 or 4 groups as far as representing their membership base with legislators. So because of all that intellectual capital, that the building that I have with a great team, great employees, great team members, great execs, we know we have the intellectual capital necessary to support it. Now we have validated numbers to support Sammy Sliders. Now we have the second location that we've invested in to tweak everything, and we know we're ready to go. So now we feel really comfortable into scaling it forward as a franchise model and having, households invest in it because we know we've got it right.
Yeah.
And I see time and time again, because of my political connection and my government relations connection with the International Franchise Association, and through our absorbability firm coaching ideas, concepts, and brands, we see too many times people that have something really cool that works strong, and they haven't really two'd or thirded it, they duplicated it, second, third location, and they just go. And then
go with franchising.
Just go with franchising. And then it's exciting and it's different and everybody buys a franchise, no infrastructure in place, no track record in place, do not understand their benchmarks, their KPIs. And then what happens after a year and a half, boom, it just starts to crash. And that's kind of sometimes the black eye of franchising, but it's really far and few between. I mean, I would say that the franchise model is probably one of the best business models around if you study it correctly in wealth creation and wealth transferability, if you want to pass it down, which I'm doing right now with my son. My son's coming to business. And I'm getting him ready at 27 years of age now, getting him ready for, taking some batons, some things that I do. But it takes time. It takes dedication. It takes humbleness. There's no ego involved in building a franchise model. You have to accept you failed at something, and how can you make it better, and how can you fix it? And then you've got to be able to have enough integrity that if you can't figure it out, then don't franchise a damn thing, right? It shouldn't be franchised.
Somebody said, and in a recent episode, I think it was, that there's franchises that are built for the franchisor, and there's franchises that are built for the franchisee. And what I took from that is you're talking about building a franchise for the franchisee, because you're not racing out to sell franchise licenses because then you can, bring in all these fees. Like, that's a kind of a myopic, but I guess that's why y'all consult. That happens. Maybe it's naivete, maybe it's just, short-sightedness or whatever, but if the way you're building it, I'm hearing this very clearly, you're not guaranteeing success, but boy, have you figured out all the pitfalls and the things, and you've got it down to as almost as good of a plan that's like, here's the playbook. You're not 100% guaranteed, but if you execute on this playbook and listen to us, you have a very high likelihood of success. Is that kind of the
pretty much? I mean, I've done things to say, all right, I'm going to do it the right way, and I'm going to do it the wrong way. How will somebody take this that might not have ever been in a kitchen? What if they do it the wrong way? What's going to happen? How can I simplify that process? How can I make it to where it's the right way every time? I think like that because, it's not me in the kitchen always. It's a staff member, an employee. They might just say, okay, nobody's watching. Let me just see if this will work. How do we simplify things, but the end product be the best product that hits the guest.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reality is that most of the time where the other guest that made that comment, that don't register with me. I say even when I'm on stage speaking to 1,000 people, or 300 people, or 25 people, I tell emerging brand franchise concepts or people that have concepts or thinking about franchising, don't go into franchising unless you're wanting to help people succeed with your idea.
Yeah.
It's got to be franchise owner eccentric, right? Or franchisee. I like qualifying them as franchise owners more than franchisees. But
Yeah.
typically what happens in some of those ones that take the left turn the wrong way is they got a great idea. They go to a Google search and they find some franchise consultant entity of some kind, where they're, and they don't know how to validate, and prove that, right? Are they the right entity? Are they the right people to help me with what I'm trying to accomplish? And what happens is they're undercapitalized. They don't have the capital ability to really do like what we did with Sammy Sliders. We've been blessed that we've grown up in a more visionary household than entrepreneurship household, where our parents came here with nada, nothing, right? So they had to labor earn.
Yeah.
And so what happens is we had the capital to fix and make and fix and make and fix and make and change and redo and rebrand and then recover. So, for example, and most people, unfortunately, don't have that ability to do that. So what happens is you get kind of in a quasi trap of having to sell licenses, as you put it, to help fund that process.
Yes.
And that's not a smart way to build a franchise model and take it out to the public, right? And I tell people all the time, it's kind of like, people have 401ks. I've got a 401k. And we have mutual funds. Nobody's ever read a prospectus in a mutual fund. They're there for you to read, but they're, and I used to be an investment banking guy in the background, so I know, about prospectuses and stuff. And so I tell people all the time on the stage, you have a federal, an FDD or franchise disclosure document the FTC guidelines us to give to potential candidates for franchising. It's no different than what the stocks and bond people have to give you to buy a mutual fund, right? And if you have a 401k, you probably have never been given a prospectus of all the funds you have in there, Oppenheimers or Nuveen or Fidelity or whatever it may be. So you just have to assume that they're going to get this 280-page document. Are they really going to study that, right? Have you really had in your 401k a change of, I'm going to move my fund from a growth strategy, to a long-term bond strategy. Let me have the prospectus so I can read that 97 onion paper page of book. You don't do that, right? You have a trust in the system that you can.
That's right.
And you just look for one part of that Morningstar review in financing, for example, of what the fund managers' rating and success ratios were. Well, our FDDs or franchise disclosure documents have the same. They have item 19s. So I tell new franchisors or new systems of franchising that before you start, you got to prove, you got to validate, you've got to duplicate to keep the validation of proof and moving. You can't do it from 8 blocks away. You should go different cities to validate that you can reach and manage to have a different demographic. Play with your concept and see how they're going to react to it. And then you should have and they don't understand this a lot, but you should have a strategy of how to become royalty sufficient, right? So we live off of royalties in the franchise space, whether you're McDonald's or whether you're Sammy Sliders, right? And so you should have a strategy early on how can you become sufficient in operational revenue and expense modeling where you're not handcuffed to a license fee coming in to move, to function, to support.
Okay.
And if you don't have the ability as a capitalization and the ability to build that royalty sufficient timeline, whether it's unit count and timeline and when does that intersect, you should either go borrow money or invite other investors in to capitalize yourself just so you don't get tied into that need of that license to come through. That's an issue sometimes, right? There's a lot of brands that start and launch and they have to have that fee coming in, so you get very aggressive on selling your stuff.
Yeah.
And what happens is the Federal Trade Commission gives you some guidelines that you have to disclose on how do you validate a candidate, and everybody does it with financials, whether it's your net worth or your current asset base or your current liquidity, and we do that as well. And you have to be disciplined when somebody is 20% shy of hitting that benchmark that you developed to say, I'm sorry, but I just can't approve this.
Yeah.
And they say, what's my options? Well, you're not going to increase your net assets by 20% in 2 weeks, right? So you might want to go and ask some people to invest with you. And if you stay disciplined to that, that forces you not to do that deal, not to sell that territory, instead of trying to cheat it a little bit because you need to have that next $20, $30, $40, $50,000 license fee come in.
Yeah.
You'll find yourself building a better quality product as a franchise model. You'll go to bed more happy, more at ease. And ultimately, your franchise owners are going to embrace that integrity of that model. And there's a very good chance those models have very good unit level economics at the unit level, and probably have in their item 19, which is the financial disclosures that we do at East Coast Wings and Grill, for example. You can see exactly what the model's economics are at the end as a result. So earnings claims, as we call it, is critical. I'm a fan. I would want the FTC to, instead of attacking franchising in certain areas that they don't need to be attacking franchising as a Federal Trade Commission, they should probably help make the FDD document or that franchise disclosure document, make it more stronger, and the IFA is helping them, educate them that there should be an executive summary. Because people aren't going to read the 280 pages. We tell them to, but not going to. So there should be maybe 12 pages in the beginning of that document to give them the nitty and gritty. It's going to take money. It's going to take time. If you're in a restaurant space, it's going to be a lifestyle change, right? You're marrying a restaurant for at least a year.
Yeah, you need like bullet point, but like these are the things out of this 280 pages. If if you're not going to read it, you need to know these things like very clearly, highlighted in yellow. Like,
and then as you start to launch and have a couple years of success, guess what? Your validators are going to be your franchise owners.
Sure, yeah.
They're the ones that sell the deal,
yeah.
right? Because in the back of that document, you have to list every franchise owner you have. And a smart investor who's investigating a franchise model, you should take the back of that FDD of any brand you're looking at and make those phone calls. Mm-hmm. You're talking about investing $500,000 of net capital, some debt, some out of pocket, capitalization, and then immediate cash flow is fun to watch as in a restaurant space, but you got to manage it. So you should call that franchise owner existing in the books and ask them the things that we can't legally tell somebody, right? We can't tell you how much money you can make or how much money you can lose. They don't allow it that as franchisors, the franchise owners, to say that. But you can call that franchise owner in a location in the back of that document and make that phone call and say, hey, Sammy, I see you've got 4 locations in the outside of Charlotte. You just bought Mooresville. 5 locations, which is a true story with East Coast Wings and Grill. JD, Jeff, the Penland brothers, can you talk to me about your experience? You should make that phone call and validate what the franchisor is telling you in those discovery periods and investigation periods, and then do your due diligence correctly before you buy anybody.
Yeah, yeah. Man, that is incredible advice. And people, I wonder what y'all obviously at East Coast Grill and Wings or at Sammy's are educating your potential franchisees on that process. In your experience, is it more common than not that franchisees across all kinds of different brands do that, or are most franchisees just locked in and saying, I just want to get this deal and overlook it? I mean, I wonder how common that is.
Yeah, I would say the more experienced a franchise owner is, like a multi-unit operator, right? You own several brands.
Mm-hmm.
They will want to cut through a lot of that chase.
Yeah,
right. They know what they're doing. It's like Sammy. If I take Sammy right now, walking down the street to any of these restaurants on the street, and he walks the walk-in cooler and looks at their dry storage and says, when did this truck come in? And they say it came in yesterday. He'll tell them within 4 or 5% of what their sales are.
Okay.
Right?
Gotcha.
Because he knows the space that well.
Yeah.
A multi-unit franchise owner is the same way.
Okay.
When they look at your federal, your document, your franchise disclosure document, your FDD, when they look at that document and then they ask questions that they need to ask the franchisor, before they even call a franchise owner, they got a pretty good barometer of what they're getting into. If they have no experience at all, I think a franchise system should be more disciplined with that individual, because chances are they've got a spouse behind the scenes or they have a significant other behind the scenes. And this is an economic impact, right? You have to invest to do this, and then you have to run it. And the restaurant space is extremely intense the first year to own any restaurant you buy. There's no easy way around it. You're really buying the intellectual capital, who owns the brand, and the track record of the brand. Those type of individuals should make those phone calls to the franchise owners that are existing and ask those down and dirty questions that they really want to ask, right? How's your lifestyle balance, right? How much money are you making? How much money did you put into it? Was it enough money put into it? What's the worst thing you have to deal with? What's the easiest part about it? And those are the things that you really get out of those franchise owners in the back of that FDD document. But again, it really depends on who that candidate is. The more experience that they have, the less they likely they are to really make those dialing for dollar phone calls. We tell them in our discoveries when they come in, the day that they meet, the team, and we tell them how we operate, why we do what we do, what you're going to get, what you're not going to get, what you can expect, what you shouldn't expect. When they finish all that, I usually come in and close that meeting out as the CEO. And when I finish 20, 30 minutes of conversation, I'll tell them, listen, before you make any decision about us and us about you, you should call every franchise owner in the back of that book you think you have time to call and ask those questions, because they're the ones on the front line will tell you how to shoot it, how to work it, right? How to clean it, how to make sure it's right, how to make sure it keeps working, the gun don't jam, right? Whatever you want to, any kind of adjective you want to use or anomaly you want to use about it, they're the ones that are going to give it to you raw, right? We have limitations what we can and can't say. If you have more experience, we invite that as well, but we know that dollar for dollars probably won't happen with somebody who owns 20 of these and 30 of these and 40 of those. But that's typically what I see. If you're multi-unit, there's less of what. And another thing multi-unit people are that they don't make those phone calls typically as detailed as a non-multi-unit operator or candidate would do, because they're not so concerned about what Sammy's going to tell you about his location, right? Because they're going to think, I've got more infrastructure, I'm going to operate better than Sammy, right? You own one store at Sammy Sliders. I own 64 of 3 brands. I've got a whole infrastructure in place. So those type of people don't chase the NOI as diligently as somebody who's not a multi-unit operator should chase it, because every dollar counts in net operating income. Those type of people are looking for the highest probability of NOI because they're business people, but they know that they're going to spend more money to operate multi-locations, and they're accepting a smaller number in their schematics of their ecosystem.
Okay.
Which is normal.
Okay.
Right? So they got one bucket, they're just filling it up with several types of brands.
Yep. Okay. And it seems to be more common these days to have people who own multiple locations of multiple concepts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If you're going to go in the franchise investing area, you should start with something that you like, that you love. And if you're a foodie, pick the best concept you think that you can afford to develop, and you've tasted the product over and over and over again, maybe in multiple locations, and you just love it, right? If you're going to go into a service model, and then you try those services, make sure you're happy with those services, how are they servicing you. So you should do all that if that's your process of wanting to leave your corporate day job, let's say, and become a franchise owner of the restaurant space.
Yeah.
You should love the product, and that's what you should buy. It may be if you're a burger person, and go try 6, 7 burger places. If you're a wings concept lover, then go try all the franchising in the wings space. Another kind of thing that's unique about brands that are emerging, like Sammy's is right now, is the multi-unit operators love the new hot concepts, right? They want to be first in because they want to capture territory.
Yeah.
If they believe in it, they love the product, they meet with the ownership and intellectual capital, and that jives. They know what they can do and not do with the menu. They know what they can do and not do with growing. They're not going to care if the FDD says that we're averaging $1.2 million in AUVs. They're going to say, I can take it to $1.5 million, $1.4 million, right? So those type of people like to get in early, because if it does start to traction, like as Sammy Sliders is showing us huge promise and traction with all the input we're getting from people calling us about when you're going to franchise. We're officially franchising now.
Okay.
They want to get as fast as they can as this thing tractions, because they want to capture their territory from where they're at.
Hey, y'all, running a restaurant, as we all know, is no easy task, but Webstaurant Store has your back. From heavy-duty equipment to everyday kitchen essentials, we've got everything you need to stay stocked all year long. And right now, you can save $50 on your order of $250 or more when you use the code WEBSAVE50 at checkout. That's WEBSAVE50, WebSave50. But hurry, this offer is only available until December 31st. Visit webstaurantstore.com today to snag some savings. And y'all, I'll throw in this piece. That's what they asked me to say. These folks are awesome to work with. They have a great website, highly regarded, a lot of happy customers, and we're super stoked to have them as a sponsor. So go check them out, webstaurantstore.com. And again, that code is WebSave50. Thanks. So when did y'all start franchising officially?
Last week.
Yeah.
Good timing. Okay.
Yeah, for Sammy Sliders last week.
Tell me about the food. Tell me about what you've got on the menu, because this is, first of all, I love burgers. I eat a lot of meat.
Yeah.
Real quality milkshake. Like, so you gotta
who doesn't?
Sorry, that's right. Ice cream
shakes. Yeah.
Okay.
Who doesn't love a burger? I mean, it's kind of like what is easy, the quick burger. You put it in your hands and you go through a fast drive-through or whatever. So burgers first thing. We have a special blend that we've come up with the right ratios, with the center of the plate muscles. There's some chuck in there, and there's some short rib in there, and there's some brisket in there. We got a nice blend. Our patties bigger than our bun, like we said. We want it to fall off the bun and be just a few more bites than your normal slider.
Yeah.
Chicken, we're using 100% full muscle chicken tenders that we're breading in-house, that we're frying in-house. Antibiotic-free chicken's clean. French fries, we give you options. We do hand-cut fries. We do crinkle-cut fries. The crinkle-cut fries, people love to dip them in the ketchup and let the sauce be on the whole,
clings to it, yeah.
The whole French fry. Our shakes, our ice cream shakes, there's no milk in it. It's coming out of, it's very soft coming out of a machine, and we're putting the best quality with it. High butterfat ratio, high quality ingredients, whether it's the cookie butter shake or the cookies and cream. We're using Oreos. We're grinding them in-house. We're trying to do as much work as possible for the end product to be the best item as possible.
Yeah, best in class. And what he means by the milk is that we don't cut it, right? We don't pour the ice cream out and then cut it with milk before we blend it. It's ice cream out, ingredients, in the blender it goes. That's why you have to have that boba straw to pull that stuff through there. But it goes viral. I mean, it literally goes viral. We opened up Kernersville in mid-October, and what went viral? Our cookie butter ice cream shake went viral. People coming in about that shake.
What is it?
Cookie butter ice cream shake. Biscoff crunches through it, whatever on top of that. But
Creamed out, or like a peanut butter almost, very creamy cookie butter. And we're also putting a crunch in there, so you get a little bit of that smoothiness and that crunch in every slurp.
That's the chef in him, right? He wants everything to be differentiating. What can we do with this shake that just nobody's doing? What can we do with this nobody's doing? He just described our protein process. I mean, who does that, right? Who goes to the cutting boards as he did at the butchers with big companies out of Greensboro, North Carolina, and says, I don't like this. I want you to add this. I want you to grind it this way. I want you to do this. I need the circumference to be this. I need it to be this. It took him probably 3 or 4 weeks to get our hamburger patty for our sliders the way he wanted it, and nothing comes in frozen. We don't allow it. It's got to be fresh. So when we order our meats, for example, to be delivered on a Friday by 2 o'clock on a Thursday, they're grinding Thursday afternoon, Thursday night to us to get it Friday.
Okay.
I mean, it's crazy how they do it. And when you get that, we had somebody yesterday with the restaurant together doing some commercial stuff and some website work with a crew out of Pennsylvania. And there was somebody that came up, and was asking about the slider, and they said, well, it's only 2 bites. And he said, no. Our patty is larger than a McDonald's burger patty is for a slider.
Yeah.
So it's not 2 bites. It's 4 bites pretty easily.
Yeah, easily.
So 2 sliders and hand-cut fries and a soda with us, I don't know, $12.49, $12.69, something like that, plus tax. Go to some of the competitors or national franchise systems that have a burger, fries, and outside the fast food. Go to fast casual, $17, $18, $19 for that meal.
Yeah.
And our 2 sliders, because of how he formulated the patties, they're over a quarter of a pounder.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you're getting a meal.
Yeah.
And that was important to us. What can we do differentiating so we're not a snack concept, we are a meal concept at Sammy Sliders.
Yeah.
The chicken tenders or chicken fingers, that he mentioned, all hand breaded.
Yeah.
We tried some frozen stuff in 2021.
It wasn't
Remember
us.
that?
It wasn't us.
We tried it for like a month, and I went to him and I said, I don't want to do this. We grew up, everything from scratch in our lifespan. Why are we yielding to what the national scene says you should be doing? And we just got back down to being dirty about it, right? Hand breading it, putting it in the batter, hand breading it, frying it.
You all had this sort of revelation on the beach when you went, all right, we got to simplify this. And you said you had figured out but you had figured out the day part, but not the night part. What did y'all figure out?
We made sure a whole family could come in and eat dinner. The kids want chicken fingers, 2, 3 chicken fingers and some fries. Does the husband want a burger? Does the wife want a salad? We made sure we could attract all that. That we didn't get the veto vote and say, there's just French fries there, or there's just burgers there. Something green, something nice, something healthy.
No veto vote. I like that. Okay, because one person can veto the whole family if one person's
And who typically
they don't
does
have a
that?
salad.
Mom.
I don't want to
Mom,
say it.
yeah.
Yeah, mom.
Hey, I didn't want to say it either. But
Girl power. I mean, I get it, right? I mean, it's I've got 4 kids. I remember the days that we were driving the Suburban, and y'all want something to eat, and we're traveling, and we have to fight. Who wants Burger King? Who wants McDonald's? Who wants Wendy's? Who wants Arby's?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, Chick-fil-A came around, and there was no veto vote.
yeah.
How about Chick-fil-A? Everybody
right.
said, let's go, right? So on that beach conversation, what he just said, we realized that we were not getting that family dinner vote.
Yeah.
We were getting the lunch crowd. Go to work, got 45 minutes, go get a slider, go get it, But we were more of a French fry, deconstructed sandwich-based concept then, before we flipped it to Sammy Sliders and added more sliders and more processing and products. And what we said on the beaches, I said, we've got to figure out how to get that decision process, like my wife and I are working parents. Hey, honey, what are we going to do for dinner tonight? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? Hey, let's meet at Sammy Sliders. Right? That wasn't happening before all those changes. We were being vetoed. They were going to, Taco Mamas. They were going to other concepts in our area that we have our first Sammy Sliders at. So that was key, and it was so, I want to say simplistic. After $600,000 investment, I don't know how simple you make that, but when we made the changes and saw the consumer reaction, we were like, wow, how do we miss that?
Right.
And that's the part where I mean that a franchise system it owns those misses way before you sell a franchise to somebody and their family, and then you realize that miss was somebody else's money. To me, that's not cool to do it that way.
Yeah.
So we gesture ourselves all the time in some fun, on how offline we were with our intellect, because I think we're pretty smart restaurant guys, on how simplistically we missed something
Yeah.
that made the consumer base embrace us.
Yeah.
And when we realized that, it just clicked, and we
That
just
was it.
went.
So, okay, so you just started franchising. Now, does that mean, like, how do you find franchisees? Is that something you outsource? Do they come to you?
At Sammy Sliders, I just took a page out of my East Coast Wings and Grill early days, right? Because when you build a franchise model, even though Sammy and I, and we have another investor out of Chicago and Scottsdale, Brad, it takes money to build it. You want to hire a franchise development officer, 6 figures. You want to hire a vice president of marketing and franchising, 6 figures. And we want to treat Sammy Sliders as an emerging brand. We want it we want the brand and the people involved with it to grow the way that I know you have to grow to learn to franchise the right way.
Yeah.
We didn't want to come in and say, hey, we all have the ability to capitalize it, boom, and just hire away and go, because nobody then who's coming up in the brand is going to learn the struggle of what you need to learn of how franchising should work.
Right.
So what we did basically is we decided to, like I did at East Coast Wings and Grill, we outsourced our franchise development. So we retained Dine Growth Group, DGG, which is a restaurant full-service franchise sale organization. And
Where
we
are
pay
they?
them a much smaller. The CDO is based out of the Chief Development Officer based out of Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
And we basically, actually, we invested in it a little bit too. But we basically told her, we said, hey, we want to outsource this. What's the fee every month? It's much cheaper on the fee than it is to hire a CDO to do the franchise development, because we wanted it to feel and operate like an emerging brand. We didn't want to cheat it because we had the intellect and the capital abilities, and we wanted it to be that way, because we think that is going to grow a better integrity-driven concept and team.
Okay.
And so we outsourced it all. So Carrie Evans, is oversighting that DGG concept. Her last big hurrah was Chicken Salad Chicks. She had done a lot of work with them, putting them on the map.
Yeah.
And Carrie, in fact, reached out today on our way here and told us that she's got, in a week's time, a ton of activity, because everybody's watching us, right? I mean, you got Sammy G, the chef, Silver Plate Award winner 2022, involved with Zorability and the coaching firm that people are aware of. And you've got me on the board of directors of the IFA, and Mike time all the time, and they know who I am. As big as franchising is, the kind of who's who of the franchise space is really a small circle. So everybody is, other concepts are watching us.
Yeah.
In our space and not in our space. Multi-unit operators who know us are watching the concept kind of on the wing to see how the proofing process will go out. But I think that what people are going to find with Sammy Sliders is that we took actually no shortcuts, because we could have, right? We could have capitalized. We could have brought in a bunch of talent fast. And some franchising may say in the private equity world, you should have done that so you can go boom, go a lot faster. I don't think that you can really get the culture that is necessary to be in place to drive an emerging brand, to grow it correctly, and have that eccentric franchise owner first culture mentality if you just dump money into it and bring talent too fast into it before you have activity to grow. The talent needs to learn it's a different type of animal. It's not a wing concept, it's a slider concept. The people supporting it need to understand we have to go through this.
Yeah.
We can't bypass this.
Yeah.
Right? You have to understand the reasoning. You have to see the suffering. You have to go in the restaurant and train it so you can feel what a franchise owner goes through. And as we do that and we get better at that with the teams we are hiring right now, then we might be able to speed up a little bit, but we're not going to be this brand that says 50 in 1 year, right? We told Kerry, hey, put 20 deals down. Let's open 10 franchise locations in 2025.
Okay. That was my next question.
Let's make sure that everybody involved understands our philosophy that's all about the franchise owner success, because that's our sales team. That's who's going to sell the deals.
The
That's who's going to
franchise
validate
owners.
it, right?
Do you go concentrically out from where you are because of brand recognition, or is it more just we're going to go where the best operators are looking, and that might be in Atlanta or Denver or whatever? Like,
But we look at supply chain first,
yeah,
right?
okay.
Supply chain first, and we have the ability to be nationalized. So we do like to come out, and grow it as a spiral concept where supply chain can stay intact for logistics.
Yeah.
We will look at Sammy Sliders because it's a lesser investment than East Coast Wings and Grill is. It's a smaller box. It takes less people to operate a good day part, lunch and dinner for night part. Employee base, 7, 8 people, fully staffed on a busy Friday night. That's it, because it's a counter service process, self-serve,
right.
Coca-Colas, etc. We told Kerry that if you bring us somebody, space holder, Alabama, they need to be multi-unit operators or infrastructure in place, or we're not going to do it.
Okay.
We're not going to take a husband-wife routine or a couple routine or an investor routine that have other real jobs and they just want to play in the franchise space in Alabama as store number 5 or 6 or 7, right? We're not going to do that deal. Some brands do that. We will not do that. We're going to stay laser-like focused with our disciplines of building the right unit-level economics culture and helping them earn, because I know, I've done it for 20 years, that if you have that culture, when somebody makes a phone call to our Penland brothers in the Charlotte markets for East Coast Wings and Grill, about East Coast Wings and Grill, let's say in a different part of North Carolina we don't operate in, or in Virginia or in South Carolina, I know exactly what they're going to hear from these young guys that are now in their mid-30s and own 4 locations, getting ready to open their 5th, right? They're going to hear the right things. And we don't coach them. They're going to hear how hard it is. They're going to hear it takes money. And they're going to hear it takes time and patience to build it the right kind of way. And then if they buy that, we feel very comfortable at East Coast Wings and Grill that new franchise owner has gotten all the right information necessary for their decision process. So I'm going to do the same with Sammy Sliders. Build it from the and we're going to actually allow the growth of and success of our franchise owners initially to drive the timeline on how fast and how big we grow it.
Sure.
Right? We're going to put a benchmark in there and say, hey, if we're running a 90, 85% margin of where everybody's hitting, the benchmarks and KPIs of the brand, let's keep the pedal moving. If we drop below that, let's pull it back. I've done it. East Coast Wings and Grill 3 times. I stopped franchising for 2 years. We got to go back and fix supply chain. We'll spend a year fix supply. We got to come back and fix this. So it takes a lot of discipline to do that, especially when you got something hot like Sammy Sliders is right now, and everybody's calling saying, when is it ready? When is it ready? Can I do something now? Can I go now? It takes a lot of discipline after you spent the money that we've spent in 3 years getting this thing proofed and validated correctly, not to sell deals. But you have to have that, because at the end of the day, it's about the franchise owner's success.
Yeah.
Because if we're ancillary. If they succeed out there, we earn from the top.
Yeah.
They earn at the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? So it's got to be from them first to us.
So you'll open, you think, 10 next year?
I'll say 10 to 15 next year is kind of what we think is going to happen. I'll be happy with 10 franchise locations. We're going to look starting January for our 3rd corporate location.
Okay.
We're that satisfied with number 2. It's outperforming number 1.
Okay.
Which is what you want to see, brand awareness.
But you'll stay, just for the listeners who don't know, like Winston-Salem, Kernersville, you're talking about
the middle of North Carolina.
What distance between, how far is it between your
17, 18 miles.
Yeah. So you would go
we might go to
Point
Greensboro, another 17 miles. We might go to High Point, another 17 miles.
Okay.
We may pop one in Charlotte, North Carolina, just on purpose to own one here.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you go to your East Coast Grill and Wings franchisees, and like, are they good
So-
candidates for this, or is that a competitive
some
brand?
are,
Or
some are. So all the majority of my East Coast Wings and Grill franchise owners, the majority have, in some time frame in this year in 2024, have either called me, text me, or emailed me, "Hey, what's going on with this? Can we talk about it?"
yeah,
But again, with that discipline that you have to have, and I'm super blessed economically that I can have that discipline. I told probably 30% of who reached out, I called them back and said, "You're not going to be a good candidate right now because in our system, everything's transparent. So I see the economics of what they're doing, and they're doing fine. But I'm not going to stress capital economics with an operator who's in their comfort zone because they just want to have another, Sammy and Sam concept process."
yeah, okay,
So I know the owners of the bigger brand that's in 5 states in Southeast who, not just economically, but from the ability of life-work balance and intellectual capital they have around them, that can probably venture off and add another brand to their portfolio. So those franchise owners, will give them a green light probably in December for 2025.
mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to say, "Hey, I've got 20, 30 franchise owners at East Coast Wings and Grills, so I'm going to go sell 20 deals."
Gotcha.
I'm not
Okay.
going to do that because not everybody is wired to be a multi-unit operator and a multiple concept operator. It takes a certain talent to be able to do that.
Yeah,
And I don't want to put somebody who's succeeding with me in one concept into a path that may have rocks and bumps in it unnecessarily. Now, if they decide to go buy something totally different on their own cognizance and their own investment, I can't stop that.
yeah, sure.
But I'm not going to have a conscience about that.
Yeah, I
Right,
got you.
as I would
That's
have.
very wise, man. A lot of wisdom coming out of y'all's lips today, for sure. Discipline, patience, nailing the basics, getting
That's
it
it.
right. You mentioned Chick-fil-A. One of the things, I mean, I have 3 kids. They're older now. One's in college. One's a senior, one's a freshman. We went to Chick-fil-A all the freaking time. Growing up. Part of it was because there wasn't a veto, and part of it was because the experience. I mean, the food's but like, I always find I'm fascinated. First of all, I don't know how they employ as many people as they do, and the numbers are still there, but they do, and they do it well. And there's that human connection that, as a consumer, I'm always looking for, that you don't get these days at a lot of brands, particularly like the franchise type brands where it's all about speed and everything else. But I was elated yesterday when I saw something, which was the new Starbucks CEO came in and said, "We're going to do 2 things right out of the gate. Number 1 is we're going to simplify our menu. It's gotten too complicated. Number 2, we're buying 200,000 Sharpies and we're bringing those back into Starbucks because I want the authenticity and the messiness and the humanity of a name written on a cup versus that sticker." I like coffee. I don't go to Starbucks. I used to, but I kind of stopped because I was like, there's just no, it's like you may as well just put robots in, right? Like, so I'm real curious
It's hospitality.
about the intersection between like efficiency and humanity, and like the confluence of those 2 things is like where hospitality lives now, because there is a lot of technology and all this stuff that's important, but if you miss the human piece, you're going to miss what hospitality is really all about, which is like, it's what y'all know so well. It's the eye to eye, face to face, the interaction with another person, the why am I going to take my family somewhere tonight? Yeah, the food's got to be good. The ambience has got to be great. But like, if the people that work there are miserable, then
Hospitality's
done.
key. I'm
out.
I also have a high-end steakhouse, which hospitality is the number one thing.
That's it. Yeah.
It's hospitality and quality. You can go anywhere and get a steak or a drink. It's the hospitality what brings people to your doors.
That's right.
And it's the hardest thing to teach, or the hardest culture to have.
Yes.
And that is key. You have the hospitality part, which Chick-fil-A's hit it.
Yeah.
Starbucks is going back that route with writing the name back. Let's give that personal touch. Let's call them by name. Let's write their name down. It goes a long way. it's a huge differentiator when it comes to any, whether it's the fast casual, or whether it's the fine dining, or whether it's fast food. And at the end of the day, that's what people return to.
That's you know, I wonder about this because I'm so curious how y'all approach that piece, because to me it seems probably harder than ever to get people that work for you in these locations to understand that and buy into that. That's why I am always so fascinated with Chick-fil-A. I mean, like my son worked there, and my other son he waited too late and didn't get a job there this summer. It's like, yeah, sorry, we're already over. There's like a waiting list.
That's right. Yeah.
And all the parents want their kids to work there because like they're going to learn a lot of, like this.
It's a great learning lesson.
It's a great place to learn so many skills. The kids today are growing up with these devices and they barely actually communicate
Interaction.
person to person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They don't talk on the phone. And I find that to be a really big problem, because then in the world of hospitality, it's like this shrinking pool of people that you can hire that can actually deliver that. And maybe it'll start to turn. I mean, all parents are starting to realize, like, okay, there's too much like these phones. The schools are now going, you know what, we're not going to have phones in school. So this is a good thing.
It's a great thing.
But I'm real curious what y'all have seen and experienced and how you like mitigate that part, because of that human touch is so important.
So for me in the franchise space with the restaurant as a product, we train the franchise owners to understand that it's not sliders and chicken tenders and ice cream shakes that we sell. We sell a dining experience.
Amen.
It's experience. So what you have to do is you have to get that dining experience culture from the get-go with the franchise owner who's going to be investing in that new market location. So let's space hold for a second, Kernsville, and pretend that we're franchise owners, right? So, or Sammy's a franchise owner, and I'm there from corporate yesterday, and I'm kind of visiting the second week or third week he's open. You instill that you're selling dining experience, and your toolbox has sliders and hand bread chicken tenders and salads and 2 kinds or 3 kinds of fries and onion rings and whatever your products are. You have to embed that, and then you have to, as a company, to get that new location understanding it, you have to lead that by example so they can see what you mean by that. So training that, talking about it, having everybody nod their heads, yes, I got it. They have to then see it. Let me write it, let me paint a picture for it, and let's look at it again. So, example, dining experience. When you have a mom and dad and a 6-7-year-old and she's acting up a little bit and they're trying to eat, and you hear the third time, settle down. I ran and grabbed a little paper cup, a water cup that we give out for water, and I poured half of ice cream in it, put some Oreos on it, and I went back and I says, "May I, Mom and Dad?" And they looked at that and they go, "Sure, I'd love for you to do that." And I said, "You want some ice cream?" And you hand the ice cream over, and all of a sudden, boom, quiet. They're having their conversation. She's into that ice cream. So it's that dining experience that they're going to talk about when they leave.
It's that
right?
personal touch.
It's that dining experience. That's right, personal touch. So when they go and leave and talk to their friends, wow, we went to Sammy Sliders, last night, and we couldn't get, Rachel was acting up too much. And all of a sudden, somebody with a polo shirt came over and gave her ice cream. Boom, now we finished our conversation, our meals. It's the dining experience, their experience with that process. And that's what really we do at both the brands out there with East Coast Wings and Grill and Sammy Sliders. And that's what we coach our food brands at Zorability, our coaching firm. You need to cancel clear your mindset and restructure yourself as a founder or as a corporate office to say, what really are you doing in the food space? It's all dining experience. That's something that Chick-fil-A figured out years ago, and I know some of those corporate people down in Atlanta from just the franchising world, and even they took 7 years to instill that. If you read the books, right, it took them a long time to get what you just described in that experience, and it's my pleasure, and the things that they do didn't happen because it was a training manual and here you go. It has to be trained. It has to then have corporate people showing people what that means live on the floor.
Yeah.
And then you tell somebody else to go do it, and it develops into a culture as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you get that culture done the right way, not to sound politically cliche-ish about it, but it takes a village. It takes the consumer base. It takes the employee base.
I agree
And,
with that.
and your employee experience should not your consumer experience should not outshine your employee experience.
Yes. Right.
So you've got to treat your teams especially in the restaurant space at the ground level. You got to give them the same experience of expectations you have for them as what you want your consumer to have coming in and buying your product.
Yeah.
So all that dining experience and culture it's not easy, but it's unique. And if you approach it from that being your product versus ice cream shakes and sliders, or in this town, the only buffalo wing that's won the wing championship in Buffalo, New York, with East Coast Wings and Grill. That's fun, trivia, marketing stuff, things you talk about at the restaurant level, in the restaurant. But it's a dining experience that gets the veto vote away, and it also raises the retention of your guests that come in to visit.
It seems like if you're thinking you're going to leave your which this is not uncommon franchising, I assume people are like, I'm done with corporate America or whatever. I've saved up some money. I want to go do this thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking you got to be ready to be there. And you mentioned like the first year. So, I mean, you better be there I would think. Like, I know that if I were doing it, I'd be there every freaking day for a year. I mean, like, it just, because what you just said, that's something that, like, you can tell somebody that story and they can understand that intellectually and grasp that and go, yeah, I get that. But doing that in the heat of the moment when there's all this stuff going on and having the self-awareness to go, kids acting up. Okay, I got it. Like, you just kind of have to learn that because you're there in it. And I see, like, it's weird to me where there's franchises that will sell a franchise to somebody who's like moonlighting, or they think like I can just hire a GM to come in that's experienced. I just, maybe that's possible. Boy, I wouldn't do that. Like, I mean, if you really want to be, you have to treat it like it's your baby. And you have to treat it like, okay, I'm buying the product. I'm paying to have the product, and here's how to sell but that's like got to be your thing, not y'all's thing. Like, this is my thing now. Like, and it is my baby, and I am gonna hustle and grind and do everything to make this thing incredibly successful. And if it doesn't work, it ain't because I wasn't there all the time, or it ain't because I wasn't like giving it everything I had, or I was like half-timing it because I still had my corporate job, or I was still whatever. Like, you got to just get after it. Am I right? I mean,
you're exactly right. We've talked about food quality. We've talked about hospitality. The fun part is when you do both at the same time.
Yeah.
You got a product coming off your grill, nice and fresh, and into somebody's plate to where it's warm and juicy, and you're also offering hospitality at the same time on the other side of the restaurant.
Yeah.
And somebody's walking in your door, or somebody's leaving, or somebody's putting an order in. That's the fun part, and it's not the same every day.
Yeah, and the beauty,
that's right.
It's not the same.
And the beauty
same space, but different people walking in, different challenges each day. That's the fun part. That's a restaurateur. That's what we were raised into, and that's what's pumping through our blood or through our veins. As our blood. Is that restaurant mindset, that restaurant owner drive that.
Every customer happy.
How do we make my steakhouse is 300 seats? How do I make 300 people happy at one time?
Steakhouse?
I have a steakhouse in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, called Fratelli's Steakhouse.
Fratelli's, okay.
I also have a few different concepts that I own and operate.
No, you just keep talking about your steakhouse, and I eat a lot of steak, and I'm getting like my mouth's kind of starting to
Let's go. Come see me. And that's the fun part, in the bigger stores, with the hostesses. One big thing was always, let's put a teenage girl at the hostess stand. That's the most important job. She welcomes and tells everybody goodbye.
Yes.
You know, and how do you make sure
Huge.
she welcomes everybody correctly, or or tells them everybody bye? You know, well, that's one thing that we try to do the best at in our locations, the first and last expression.
Yeah,
You
we
know?
tell our team at Sammy Sliders in Kernersville, nobody goes out that door and not been thanked for
Yeah.
coming in. And I don't care if they got thanked from the back of the restaurant, they got thanked by the soda fountain getting their take home, cheer wine or Coke. When they hit that door and you're at the cash register and not expediting somebody in conversation, thank them again.
Yeah.
So the one beauty of franchising is that it has systems that are validated and proven.
Mm-hmm.
And a good model is going to have all that down pat.
Right.
And although you need to be married to your restaurant that first year, there can be opportunities with models where you're not as not absentee or hands-on. You're kind of quasi in the middle.
Yeah.
And what we do to make sure we can alleviate what you just made a comment about a minute ago, that I would never do that, is we tell them in our documentation that if you're going to be on it for a while and then you're going to go invest in this too, invest in that too, then in our system you have to have a profit-sharing working partner.
Okay, there we go.
To protect that.
Yep, that's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're doing that for your best interests as a franchise owner, and we're doing that as well for the brand's best interest. And I'm not saying you've got to give them equity, but you have to have, it takes a village. You have to have somebody there who's going to feel the pain of that loss of food costs because you misread the screen and you made it wrong. Or it sat up there in the wind too long and, you didn't grill the onions good enough, so it cooled down the burger too fast, and they came back and said, hey, it's too cold or it's not warm enough. You've got to have somebody that's got a dog in the fight there.
Yeah.
And the way you can alleviate being a little more absentee in a franchise model is by being smart and having somebody operating for you there that you tell them, hey, we can do whatever that number is, 15 points, 20 points, 17 points a month. I'll share some of that with you this kind of way, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And allow them to feel the good part of the franchise experience or the restaurant experience, and also allow them to see the miss.
Yeah.
When they don't get that piece of the action cut to them because they say, well, we should have paid more attention here, more attention there. So we've put things in place that if you are buying a Sammy Sliders because you own other things as well and you're adding us as a portfolio brand, chances are you already have those processes in place already, right?
No doubt about it.
If you are an Oracle executive in Charlotte, North Carolina, and you're done with it, and your spouse is a school teacher, and you go home and you talk to each other and you say to each other, hey, let's go buy some franchise. We love food. Let's go buy a food franchise, right? Those people need to be told in that discovery process when you're meeting with them, you'll be married to the store for a year.
Yeah.
And if you're going to stay teaching at school, you got to make sure that we can have him or vice versa, or her, whoever, for a year of their life, they're going to be in the restaurant 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Now, once they've paid those dues and figured out, all the systems at the back of their hand, have the ability to drive that dining experience, now you can put seasoned management in there and do less touches.
Sure.
But if you think you're going to buy a quality franchise model in the restaurant space, work it for the first 30 days, and then, it's July, so I've got to go to Aruba for vacation. And you open up in June, ain't going to happen with us.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
It's almost like if somebody would sell you that you could do that, you shouldn't be investing in that franchise.
Yeah.
True.
Franchising, if you were to Google it, basically in generalization says that you're buying and operating system of whatever it is, in our case, restaurants.
Yeah.
That the people that have founded the system have gone through all the beaten up process they have to go through to give you a better opportunity of succeeding than you being independent on your own. Right? That's the broadness of the franchise model is. But absolutely, if somebody's pitching you in a discovery or on a phone call that you ain't got to be there, you ain't got to do this, we have systems and do that, that's just not true.
Yeah.
Right? You run.
Right.
It's not true.
That's good advice.
run.
I bet that happens.
And it probably does. But you should not invest. Trust me, give me your $100,000, $200,000 in this stock right here. It may be a pink sheet, but one day it's going to work out. Trust me. Without doing some research and Googling the company or whatever, or meeting face to face, and that's why cold calling in the finances has gone away. There's no such thing as cold calling anymore, right?
Yeah.
Nobody gets a phone call anymore and says, "Hey, I got this new company. Just figured out how to make new zippers
Right.
for jeans, and it's going to be this major $1 billion company," and that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Just invest smartly,
Yeah.
and don't be afraid to investigate. If you're a foodie and you like pizza concept, then go do. Investigate 5 pizza concepts. You're a burger lover, investigate 5 burger concepts. And ultimately, buy what you believe in, you're looking at, would work in your community, and then buy the validation of the franchise owners that are in the system.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So you've got, what you have ahead then is you've just started franchising.
The second concept, yeah. So in our case,
Sammy's, you've
so
just started.
in our case, we don't have a lot of franchisors to validate. So basically, you're looking at us and saying, based on what you guys have done, I may want to call those franchise owners and say, "Hey, how's your experience with Ballas and the gang?"
Yeah.
Right? Since we're the same people who own Sammy Sliders, and because of that, we feel very comfortable and that we've launched already, and we're already getting some inquiries and traction. But
These first franchise owners. I'm getting there. Ice cream shakes, franchise owners. I'm feeling you. All right. So they will be, that's really like.
It's your validation.
That's your legacy.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like
It's no for every brand. So East Coast Wings has 5 or 6 franchise owners that some of them have become good friends of mine. I call my legacy franchise owners. Been in the system 15, 17 years. Another great validator when you see people in the system for a long time. Now I've got some that have been there for 17 years are ready to retire. God bless them. That's what this business is for. That's why you go into business, to create some type of a wealth, whatever your goals are. It can be exuberant, it can be normal, it could be whatever every individual wants to do. But yeah, that's what franchising can do for you if it's done the right kind of way. So a franchise candidate needs to investigate everything about what they think they want to do, and then understand that it's capital intensive, it's time intensive, and if you pick the right franchise model with the right people driving it and supporting it, in most cases, I'd say in 85% of franchise cases globally, it's a good experience. You get amplified when you hear about some of the bad experiences out there. And of course, post-COVID, it's been restaurant crazy a little bit. People still haven't figured out how to dig out of it. And we all see those highlights, TGI Fridays doing this, and so doing this. But the franchise model, in generalization of it, because I know the inside numbers of all the brands in our membership at the IFA, 85+%, 90% of those franchise owners are happy.
Yeah.
The other 10, 15% aren't happy. Who knows, right? They overbought, too much to manage. I didn't realize I had to be married to it the first year, even though we told you had to be married to it the first year. Not happy. Geographic obsolescence changes, and all of a sudden there's a median on the roadway. On Independence Boulevard, I remember when I was in college here, there was no median there. You can get from one side to the other.
Took
That's
you
not happening no more.
Solid hour to get from
different road.
downtown to Monroe, but
and you can't go left or right because there's a median all the way down. So things change, and all of a sudden you have these bad experiences. But a good franchise system is going to do the homework to make sure when you bring a location you're desiring in a market, it's the right spot based on benchmarks and KPIs that would work. And if you do get put into a curveball corner, a good system will have the talent involved to work with landlords to educate them. Hey, here's why we do what we do. We need some help here, or whatever it may be. And that's where the other 10 or 15% comes from. It's not that maybe 1% where people are saying, you buy 10 of these, you ain't got to do nothing. They work by themselves. Maybe 1% of franchising gets put into that kind of category, maybe 1%, unfortunately. But, there's always a bad apple in every industry you look at.
There's a well-known brand and fast food, drive-through, tons of locations, owned by private equity, lots of corporate owned, lots of franchise owned. The franchisees and their franchise association are kind of going like this with the franchisor.
They sell coffee.
It's one of the things they sell. We'll talk about it offline. But
Yeah.
my point is, that's where that can get when a brand gets big enough and is profitable enough, and then private equity comes in, and then so that's also a part of this story. Is you really need to understand, and in this situation, you had a lot of franchise owners who've been there a really long time before private equity came in, and then that just changes everything. And I think
it's
that
culture, though.
that's
is
right.
it the wrong culture? Is it somebody's not happy? What happened? Like you said, 30, 40 years of them owning a concept. And there's a curveball thrown at it. What's going on there?
Look, private equity has got its place in many things that they do. However, franchise owners and brands need to understand that private equity is challenged and charged with return on capital.
Yep.
Period.
That's
right? So they're going to drive return on capital. So as soon as a brand decides to go to private equity, whether it is to cash in if you're a founder, or I don't know exactly who you're talking about, which we won't talk about on the air, but or it's just time for that differentiation of change, or the dollar amount got so big you just got to say yes, right? Because some of these deals are going down. I mean, Subway went down for $9-point-something billion. And Fred DeLuca was a quasi-mentor of mine the first 4 or 5 years I was in franchising, who's passed away 4 or 5 years ago with cancer.
Yeah.
Franchise owners, things do change, because all of a sudden, that family dynamic of the brand, or that culture, as Sammy, perfectly said, that dynamic does change because the focus does shift a little bit. Now, I'll say that not all private equity dismantles a brand like that. Any change is going to have skeletons in the closet that you're going to have to navigate through, decide of what can be thrown away, what can be dusted, what can be cleaned, especially with brands that are 30, 40, 50, 60 years in age. But ultimately, if you're a younger brand, because I've seen young brands go to private equity very, very quickly, 100, 125 locations, boom, the private equity. There is a culture change with that.
Yeah.
Period. Not all that change is always negative.
Yeah.
I would say that, it's perceived always negative the first 90 to 120 days or 180 days of change, because there's typically better financial model systems in place, and they start measuring things that previously brands didn't measure.
Yeah.
Right? Trying to drive every basis point that they can, right? Because they're under a challenge and charged with other people's money in this investment pool of dollars they've got in there. So I don't know if we'll ever dabble into private equity in our journey or not. I'd prefer, I'll just space hold this for the East Coast Wings and Grill. If I ever decided to divest East Coast Wings and Grill because of other things that I have going on, I'd probably tackle trying to figure out how the franchise owners can own the concept before I went to private equity, right? They're the ones that built it. I orchestrated it. I launched it. I'm conducting it, but they're the ones on the front lines making us look good.
Yeah.
So, man, if I could figure that out one day, if that day ever comes, and do something that nobody talks about, would be really cool. But that's how we're built.
Yeah.
We're built outside the box a little bit.
Well, that's great. I mean, there's I love that, y'all. There's a guy out in Colorado, not franchise, but Bojo's Colorado Mountain Pies Pizza. There's like 7 or 8 locations, and Chip Bear started that thing 50 years ago, and literally like slept on the floor in the kitchen when he first started it, because he couldn't afford rent, like back in the 70s or whatever it was. Well, Chip, 50 years in now, has decided he's signing off, but he's doing a ESOP or whatever, so the employees are buying,
That's
the
awesome.
business, and he could go sell it for a lot and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. But he's like, these people have been with me for, some of them for 30 or 40 years
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever. And I had him. I just think that's a cool
Great
story.
story.
And that doesn't ever happen in franchise like that. It's from a franchise model. So, and I meant that if I ever come to that divested day, if it ever comes to me to deal with, I'd probably tackle that first to see, could I do something? Everybody's going to say, what the hell did Ballas just do? Man, who thought about that? Whatever. Because if you've done it right 20, 30, 40 years of your journey, you've made money. You ain't got to have every penny of it, right? There's things you can do that you can not just give back to the people that help you build it, but kind of give it back, some kind of way.
Well, it's a pretty
smartly.
rewarding thing. I mean, y'all came from families where you didn't have money. I would argue that struggle and you seeing the parents struggle was in a way a gift for you, because it gave you the drive and inclination to go figure out how to do this and the work ethic it takes to do this. I always talk about, people talk about generational wealth and all this stuff. I'm like, man, I was sort of the same. I don't want, there's value in having to earn it yourself. I mean, there are a lot of people in this town, where families made a lot of money and then kids kind of never had to earn it, and they don't have any appreciation
Kinda
for
dwindles
it.
away a little bit.
Sometimes that turns out to be such a negative thing that they have all kinds of issues, and they're so it's just, there's a pendulum, right? And somewhere in the middle, again, it's you don't, your parents said, hey, go get an education so you don't have to do this. And you're probably like, yeah, we could, but you got to work for this.
That's right.
It would be easy to just go, oh, good for
Here
you.
you are, exactly.
But you're actually doing them a disservice, right?
That's right.
By just
So my son graduated UNC Charlotte, and he got his cap and gown and degree mailed to him because they couldn't walk in 2021.
20, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
With COVID. So he never walked for his diploma. It came in the mail, beautiful, framed, and cap and gown, so front porch pictures. And when I told him, hey, I've got contacts, I could help you land a job somewhere so you can cut your teeth, and then if you cut your teeth, come to the company. Well, about 2 months later, he called me and said, hey, Dad, instead of doing that, I'm ready to come. I said, okay, well, here's what we're going to do then. If you want to come in, there's a store that I want to open up in Clemens, North Carolina, that we're going to own as a family, an East Coast Wings and Grill. You're going to spearhead that store from start to finish. Don't call me for anything. Don't support. But you have to learn what a franchise owner goes through if you want to be in the franchise system, helping support franchise owners.
Yeah.
So probably one of the most stressful times I had with my wife, Faye, and I in our 31-year marriage was that late 2020 to end of 2021, where pretty much Greg, my son, went through every ringer you can go through. But you fast forward that now to today, and he can run circles around people in the franchising space because he understands exactly what the compassion you have to have, the dedication you have to have, the mistakes you're going to make, how to correct processes, how to build a store out better, the mistakes we made in that store build out that he never made in the other builds out. Hell, he even changed 2 or 3 things that I thought I had ironcladded down for development of our locations. And he says, Dad, it's not going to work. We need to paint this. It's too much to keep up with. When you get chemical on it by accident, it changes the aluminum, it changes colors, and it doesn't look good. Go make a change brand wide.
Yeah.
Right? So that's individualized processing, right? You can have wealth, and it's just as easy to say no and earn it as it is to say, here you go.
Yeah.
It's the same effort, right, to do that. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, I was brought up that way. I'm sure Sammy's going to say he's brought up that way.
Yeah.
And I'm taking, and not just my son, my daughter Gabriella, Gabby's dental assistant. And on the weekend, she's at Sammy Sliders managing.
Yeah.
Good.
One
That's
of the
great.
stores.
That's awesome.
Because she wants extra money, and I said, well, come over there and work a little bit. Dad could give her any money she needed, but it's not going to happen. I mean, So you just, you're trying to baton pass and generational wealth transfer. For me, it's not just, a trust account.
Yeah.
It needs to be values of life and family.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
God, guys, I've so thoroughly enjoyed sitting here talking with y'all about this.
Thank you.
And congratulations on all the
Thank you.
success that you've hard earned. And I can't wait to follow the Sammy Sliders story. And I
Yeah,
can't
we'll be
wait-
in Charlotte soon.
I can't wait to come have some. I can't wait to come have some of that steak. I mean, dude, I eat steak. I
have 2 steakhouses.
do you really?
I have one across from Wake Forest University and one on the outskirts of Winston-Salem.
Yeah,
so
his Fratelli's steakhouse is amazing.
I've heard of. Okay, I mean, I know Fratelli's.
yeah, that's me.
That's you.
That's-
Okay.
I got a belt on somewhere.
All right.
There it is.
Thank y'all very
Thank you.
much. Appreciate it. Just
Thanks
last
for having
thing
us.
is where do we find y'all? What's the website? Where's the best place to?
So, SammySliders.com is where you can find the brand. And then through that brand, if you want to find us, you just find us the brand. They'll let us know you're looking for us.
Cool. All right. Well, that is a wrap. Thank
Awesome.
y'all very much. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks for taking the time to come down here.